Noticing that every morning the stable doors were mysteriously open and the horses were roaming freely across the property, the owner of the farm decided to install cameras to find out what was happening, and what he saw left him utterly speechless. "Not again," Ethan muttered to himself at dawn, coffee mug in hand, as he strode toward the paddock fence. His brow was furrowed, frustration written all over his face. Just like the mornings before, the horses were out, casually trotting across the dusty yard of Pradera Serena. Hoof prints scattered across the ground, accompanied by the mess of overturned buckets and scattered hay. It made no sense. Ethan was meticulous. He checked every latch before heading to bed. Something was off. Ethan wasn't new to this life. A seasoned farmhand, he'd spent years caring for the animals on the Banham family's ranch. He knew the doors couldn't simply blow open in the night, nor was it likely to be an accident. Could it be kids playing pranks? He thought, recalling the teens who occasionally visited for riding lessons. But this wasn't a one-time event. Every morning brought the same scene: free horses and chaos. That particular morning, seeing Bella, the mischievous black mare, digging into an overturned bucket of oats, Ethan had had enough. Something, or someone, was causing this, and he needed answers. He approached the Banhams, Henry and Grace, who were strolling toward the house. "Mr. Henry, Mrs. Grace," he called, his voice firm but polite. "We need to talk about the stables. This can't keep happening." Henry, his salt and pepper hair framing a calm yet attentive face, exchanged a concerned look with Grace, whose sharp eyes softened with worry. The ranch had been their lifelong dream, and their love for their horses was evident in every corner of the property. "What's going on, Ethan?" Henry asked, his tone serious, sensing the urgency. "For weeks now, I've been finding the stable doors open in the mornings, with the horses roaming loose. It's not just one door. It's several. I'm sure it's not me." "I check every lock before I turn in," Ethan explained, his frustration barely concealed. Grace folded her arms, her gaze scanning the yard where a few horses were still wandering freely. "Do you think someone's sneaking onto the property at night? Maybe someone from town who wants to get close to the horses?" Her protective instincts were kicking in. The thought of strangers lurking around unsettled her deeply. "I've thought about that," Ethan admitted. "But who could it be? No one would come here without being noticed, and doing this every single night. It doesn't seem like just a prank." Henry and Grace's worry deepened. Loose horses weren't just a nuisance. They could get hurt. Years of training and careful handling could be undone by a single reckless night. "So, what do you suggest we do?" Henry asked, his voice calm but determined, clearly trusting Ethan's judgment. Ethan paused, considering his words. "We could set up cameras around the stables. Discreet ones, just to see what's going on. That way we'll know if someone, or something, is causing this." Grace raised an eyebrow. "Something? What are you suggesting?" "I'm not sure," Ethan said, shrugging slightly, uncomfortable with the vagueness of his theory. "It could be an animal, or—" He hesitated before adding, "maybe even one of the horses is somehow opening the doors themselves." The idea drew a skeptical chuckle from Henry. "Grace, don't dismiss it too quickly. Horses are smarter than we give them credit for. If it's Bella or one of the others, I'd love to see it for myself." With that, they agreed to install cameras that very night. Small and well hidden, the cameras would be positioned to capture every movement near the stable doors. Whatever the explanation, they'd have answers by morning. The next day, as the first rays of sunlight spilled over the ranch, Ethan headed straight for the shed where the monitor was set up. The soft, golden glow of dawn contrasted with his racing thoughts. His fingers trembled slightly as he powered up the screen, eager and anxious to uncover the mystery. "Let's see who's been messing with my horses," Ethan muttered under his breath. As the screen flickered to life, the footage from the previous night began to play. At first, everything seemed normal. The stables stood quiet and still, shrouded in darkness, with only faint shadows shifting now and then. Ethan turned up the volume, hearing the soft creak of the stable floor under the horse's hooves. A familiar and oddly comforting sound. Nothing unusual so far. But then, as the timestamp on the video hit 3 a.m., something unexpected caught his eye. A figure moved toward the door of Bella's stall. Squinting, Ethan leaned closer to the screen in disbelief. The figure wasn't a person. It was Bella herself. The black mare's sleek coat glimmered faintly under a sliver of moonlight slipping through a crack in the stable wall. What happened next left Ethan speechless. Bella extended her neck gracefully, her muzzle reaching for the latch. With an astonishing level of precision, she began to manipulate the lock with her teeth. The movement was smooth, deliberate, and, dare he think it, practiced. "This can't be real," Ethan whispered, glued to the monitor, his heart racing. Bella gave the door a gentle nudge, and it swung open with a barely audible creak. She stepped out calmly, pausing only to shake her mane before trotting over to the next stall. Using the same method, she unlatched another door. The second horse, now free, neighed softly, in what could almost be described as gratitude, before following Bella. Within minutes, she had unlocked 3 more stalls, and a small group of horses quietly filed out behind her. Moving with remarkable awareness, the horses strolled toward the paddock, their hooves barely making a sound, as though they knew they needed to keep the peace. Ethan ran a hand down his face, trying to process what he'd just witnessed. "That mare's smarter than half the people I know," he thought, unable to suppress a smirk. Later that morning, he headed straight for the Banham household, his excitement barely contained. He found Henry and Grace in the kitchen, sipping their morning coffee. "You're not going to believe this," Ethan began, still shaking his head. "The one behind all this is Bella." Henry raised an eyebrow while Grace tilted her head, intrigued. "Bella?" Henry asked, setting his mug down. "What do you mean?" Ethan chuckled, the absurdity of it all hitting him again. "She's been opening the stable doors herself, and not just hers. She's letting the others out too, one by one." Henry blinked in astonishment. "With her teeth?" he asked, scratching his head as a grin spread across his face. "Exactly," Ethan confirmed. "She handles the latch like she's been doing it for years. It's almost like she enjoys it." Grace walked to the window, gazing out at Bella, who stood peacefully grazing in the field. "I always knew she was special," she murmured, a note of pride in her voice. "But this is incredible." That night, they set up the cameras again, curious to see what Bella might do next. Sure enough, just before midnight, she emerged from her stall with the same quiet determination. This time, however, she made her way to the small shed where the feed was stored. With a gentle nudge, she managed to open the door and began pulling out bags of grain. She then tipped one over, letting the other horses share in the bounty. Watching the scene unfold on the monitor, Grace stifled a laugh. She's not just clever, she's hosting a party for her friends. Henry and Ethan couldn't help but laugh as well, the absurdity and brilliance of it all leaving them in awe. As they observed her antics, it became clear that Bella wasn't just a mischievous mare. She possessed a level of intelligence and cunning that exceeded their wildest expectations. In the days that followed, Grace decided to capture Bella's nighttime escapades on video. Initially, she intended to share them with close friends and family who had already heard stories of Pradera Serena's escapologist. One quiet morning, after reviewing particularly amusing footage, an idea struck her. With a grin, Grace uploaded one of the clips to social media, and so began the tale of Bella, the brilliant and mischievous mare of Pradera Serena. Maybe more people would enjoy seeing Bella's talent, Grace thought, as she picked a clip where the clever mare gracefully slid out of her stall and opened the doors for her stablemates with the finesse of a seasoned locksmith. It didn't take long for the video to gain traction. Within days, it had been shared hundreds of times, and views quickly climbed into the thousands. Comments flooded in, with users marveling at Bella's intelligence. "She's smarter than most of us," one user joked. Another quipped, "Bella deserves her own TV show." Henry and Grace hadn't expected so much attention, but it became clear that Bella was quickly becoming a sensation. Over the following weeks, her story went viral, drawing reporters to Pradera Serena, eager to capture the farm's rising star. It was surreal for the Bannums to see so many strangers wandering around the ranch with cameras in hand. Bella's newfound fame had changed the quiet atmosphere of the farm. Grace and Ethan soon realized they needed help managing the influx of visitors. One afternoon, as Grace watched a growing line of cars parked near the entrance, she turned to Ethan. "We're going to need some extra hands," she said, her voice tinged with a mix of pride and concern. "We can't handle all these people on our own." Ethan nodded, feeling just as overwhelmed. "You're right. But look at Bella. She seems to be loving the attention. See, she's practically posing for the cameras," he said, pointing to the mare. Sure enough, Bella was strolling along the fence, her curious eyes locked onto the visitors as if she were a practiced entertainer. The Bannums hired a couple of trusted locals to help manage the crowds. Visitors started arriving from far-off places, eager to meet the horse who opens doors. Life at Pradera Serena became busier, with the farm adjusting to the steady flow of guests and cameras. Despite the commotion, Bella seemed to thrive. She not only tolerated the attention, but occasionally performed her tricks, delighting the crowd. When she thought no one was watching, Bella would slyly approach the feed shed, expertly nudging the door and attempting to open it. The audience would erupt in applause, as if they were witnessing a live show. Henry, however, observed everything with a mixture of pride and caution. While the fame brought unexpected income to the farm, he couldn't shake a nagging worry. This is her home, not an attraction, he would think during quiet moments. For Bella's sake, and the other horses, he knew they needed to find a balance. One evening, as the crowd began to thin, Henry walked over to Bella, who was lying in the grass, looking tired after another day of impromptu performances. Kneeling beside her, he whispered, "Well, Bella, you've really made a name for yourself, huh? But don't worry, you'll always be our mischievous star here at Pradera Serena." Bella lifted her head, meeting Henry's gaze with a calm, knowing look. It was almost as if she understood his words and silently promised that, no matter the fame, she would remain the clever, cheeky mare they had always loved. Recognizing the need to protect their animals and preserve the peace of the ranch, the Bannums and Ethan decided to limit the number of visitors each day. The new restrictions helped restore some of the farm's tranquility, allowing Bella and her companions to enjoy their space without constant disruption. But soon, a different kind of visitor began showing up. Ones who didn't seem like the usual fans. A small group of individuals stood out, their curiosity about Bella bordering on obsession. At first, Ethan and Grace thought nothing of it. After all, Bella's fame had made her a celebrity. But as days passed, their behavior grew increasingly suspicious. One afternoon, while Ethan was giving a small group a tour of the stables, he noticed 3 men quietly break away and head toward the area where Bella and the other horses were kept. Watching them from a distance, Ethan couldn't ignore their odd behavior. Their questions were precise, overly technical, as if they were there for more than just admiration. "What time do you usually lock up the stables?" one of them asked. The man, middle-aged with a scruffy beard and a piercing gaze, looked more interested in logistics than in Bella's tricks. Ethan narrowed his eyes, a sense of unease settling over him. Something wasn't right. Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. Adjusting his hat, he responded cautiously, keeping his eyes fixed on the man. "We close at sundown, once it's too dark to see. We don't want any of the horses getting hurt, especially with all the activity around here." The men exchanged quick glances, as if calculating something. One of them, a younger man who seemed uncomfortable, let out a nervous chuckle. "What about Bella? Is she always kept here in her stall?" Why are they so interested in her? Ethan wondered, keeping his expression neutral, though a growing sense of unease stirred within him. Bella is part of the family here at Pradera Serena, he said firmly, his tone making it clear he wasn't about to entertain any insinuations. We make sure she's well cared for and always safe. Noticing his direct response, the men quickly shifted the topic, seemingly aware Ethan wasn't one to mess with. But from that moment, he decided to stay on high alert. That night, back in his small cabin near the stables, Ethan sat by the window, staring at the moonlit outline of Pradera Serena. Something doesn't feel right, he thought, replaying the strange interaction in his mind. The men's questions, their mannerisms. It reminded him of the whispers of thefts that occasionally circulated from neighboring towns. Bella's fame had drawn all kinds of people, but he never imagined it might bring trouble to their doorstep. The next morning, while walking around the paddock with Grace, Ethan shared his concerns. He recounted the men's odd behavior and their overly specific questions. Grace, I don't know. I don't want to sound paranoid, but those men didn't seem like regular visitors. They were asking too much about the schedules where Bella is kept. Like they were planning something, he said, his brow furrowed. Grace, usually the optimistic one, sighed and nodded slowly. I get it, Ethan. You might be onto something. With so many people coming through, you never really know who's here for the horses and who's here for something else. They walked in silence for a moment, the gentle sounds of the horses in the stables providing some comfort. Finally, Grace spoke up. I think we should increase security around Bella and the other horses. I don't want to jump to conclusions, but we can't take any risks. Maybe we should reinforce the stall doors or install stronger locks. That's a good idea, Ethan agreed. And we can keep a closer eye on the cameras too, just in case something strange happens at night. They decided to take turns monitoring the security footage and maintaining a stronger presence around the stables at night. Bella was a beloved part of Pradera Serena, and they were determined to protect her and the other horses no matter what. For a few days, everything seemed normal. There were no signs of the suspicious men or any unusual visitors. The farm slowly returned to its peaceful routine. But, despite the calm, Ethan couldn't shake a lingering sense of unease, like a shadow hovering just out of sight. That evening, it was Ethan's turn to keep watch. After a long day of hard work, he was exhausted but determined to stay awake. Settling into a chair in the surveillance room, his eyes fixed on the screens, he fought off the weight of sleep creeping over him. But exhaustion won. Before he realized it, he had drifted off, the quiet hum of the monitors lulling him into a deep sleep. At dawn, he was jolted awake by the restless sounds of the horses, or rather, the lack of them. Blinking rapidly, he tried to orient himself. His heart sank when he glanced at the screens and saw empty stalls. No! Where are the horses? He whispered, panic rising in his chest. Rushing out of the surveillance room, he sprinted to the stables, dread twisting in his gut. His worst fears were confirmed. Several stall doors were wide open, and the horses were gone. Bella, the pride of Pradera Serena, was missing too. The latches were broken, and the locks had been violently forced open. There was no question about it. Someone had broken in during the night and taken the animals. Chaos erupted across Pradera Serena as Ethan, Henry, and Grace scrambled to figure out what had happened. News of the theft spread quickly, and the farm's staff joined the search, scouring every corner of the property in hopes of finding any trace of the missing horses. But for now, all they had were empty stables and a growing sense of despair. Within hours, it became clear. Someone had stolen the horses. Henry, his face etched with worry, approached Ethan. "Did you see anything, Ethan? Did the cameras catch anything?" Ethan nodded reluctantly. "I'm going to check right now, Henry. We must have captured something, though." His voice trailed off, heavy with frustration and guilt. He couldn't shake the blame he felt for dozing off when he should have been on guard. Grace joined them, her eyes shining with determination. We can't waste any time. Call the police and check the footage. We're not letting Bella or the others slip away." Ethan and Grace hurried to the surveillance room, hope and fear churning within them. As they sifted through the footage, they froze at a specific moment in the early morning hours. Headlights flickered on the screen, growing closer until a black van appeared, stopping near the stables. Ethan paused the video and zoomed in on the license plate. Though blurry, parts of the number were legible. Grace leaned closer to the screen, her brow furrowed. "We might be able to trace that plate or at least alert the other farms nearby. Someone might have seen this van." Wasting no time, they contacted the local police and provided the partial plate details. Grace also reached out to neighboring farms, sending out an alert and asking for their cooperation in locating the stolen horses. The next several hours were tense. As the sun climbed higher, the farm fell into a nervous quiet. Henry busied himself calming the remaining horses, while Grace stuck close to Ethan, waiting for any updates. By midday, Ethan's phone buzzed. It was the manager of a nearby farm. "Ethan, I think I saw something. A black van passed by this morning with a trailer attached. Looked like it had horses inside," the man said. Ethan exchanged a glance with Grace, urgency flashing between them. He thanked the man and urged him to share the details with the police. With every new clue, hope began to take root. The search for Bella and the other horses was gaining traction. Together with the police, Ethan and Grace followed the lead to a private ranch on the outskirts of town. The drive was silent, tension thick in the air. Each of them had the same thought. This might be our only chance to bring them home. The ranch was shabby and run down, with a small, dilapidated stable behind a dusty house. From a distance, Ethan spotted a couple of figures loitering near the stable entrance, and his heart raced. He imagined Bella and her companions locked away inside, waiting to be rescued. When they arrived, the police officers stepped in first to assess the situation. Ethan clenched his fists, his determination burning. "I won't hurt anyone," he thought, "but they'll learn not to mess with Pradera, Serena." After a brief exchange, the officers managed to gain access to the stable. As the doors swung open, Ethan and Grace rushed inside. There they were, Bella and the other horses. They looked tired, their coats dusty and dull, but they were alive. When Bella spotted Ethan, she lifted her head and let out a soft neigh, her eyes lighting up in recognition. Ethan approached her, his relief evident as he stroked her neck. "You're safe now, Bella. We're taking you home," he murmured. Bella pressed her head against his shoulder in a gesture of trust. As the horses were freed one by one, Grace couldn't hold back her tears. They had found them. Despite the fear that still lingered, knowing the horses would soon return to Pradera, Serena brought her a sense of peace. One of the men at the ranch tried to explain himself to the police, claiming he had no idea the horses were stolen. He insisted someone had sold them to him at a bargain price, and he hadn't asked any questions. Ethan watched in disbelief, but said nothing, keeping a firm hold on Bella's reins while the officers handled the legalities. After what felt like an eternity of paperwork, they were finally allowed to leave. As they loaded the horses into the trailer to head back home, Ethan glanced at Grace. "We'll get them home safe, and this will all be behind us," he said softly. Grace nodded, her eyes still glistening with emotion. Pradera Serena won't be the same until they're back where they belong. And with that, they began the journey home, the relief of recovery outweighing the trials of the day. On the ride back, the setting sun painted the sky in hues of orange and purple. Ethan felt a mix of relief and exhaustion. His eyes kept drifting to Bella, who, despite everything, seemed calm, as if she knew she was finally going home. When they arrived at Pradera Serena, a small crowd of employees and neighbors was waiting for them. Word had spread about the stolen horses, and friends from the town had come to show their support. The reunion was heartwarming as each horse was led back to its stall, greeted with smiles and sighs of relief. "Thank goodness they're back," one worker exclaimed, clapping enthusiastically as Ethan and Grace guided Bella and the others to their places. "It's a miracle you found them so quickly," a neighbor murmured to Henry, who stood nearby, his eyes glistening with gratitude. Ethan lingered near Bella, watching her reacquaint herself with her stall, inspecting every corner as if confirming it was just as she had left it. She seemed at peace, as if she understood this wasn't just a stable, it was home. After a moment of silence, Henry turned to the gathered crowd. "We can't thank you enough for your support. Thanks to all of you, Pradera Serena remains the safe haven we've always wanted it to be for our animals." That evening, with the farm finally quiet and the horses safe, Ethan and Grace sat together, reflecting on what had happened. They both knew changes were necessary to prevent this from happening again. While Pradera Serena had always been open and welcoming, this experience had reminded them not everyone shared their respect for animals. The next morning, Henry and Grace called a meeting with Ethan and the staff. The safety of the horses, especially Bella, had become a top priority. Henry laid out a plan to increase security, and the group listened closely, their determination reflected in the silence of the room. "From now on, we'll limit the number of visitors each day, and we'll tighten security," Henry said firmly. "We'll protect this place and our animals with all our hearts, but we'll do it smartly." Part of the plan involved installing reinforced locks on the stable doors. Grace, always deeply concerned for Bella, knew these changes were necessary. Bella had become a local celebrity, but that fame also attracted unwanted attention. That afternoon, as workers began installing the new locks, Grace and Ethan stopped by Bella's stall. The mayor watched them curiously, her eyes following the tools and movements of the workers. She seemed to sense that things were different, that the atmosphere at Pradera Serena had shifted. "You're not going to like this at first, girl," Grace murmured, stroking Bella's soft mane. "But it's for your own good. I never want you to go through something like that again." Bella huffed softly, as if she understood. Ethan, standing nearby, couldn't help but smile at the bond between Grace and the mayor. To them, Bella wasn't just an animal. She was a companion and, in many ways, a symbol of everything Pradera Serena stood for. Over the following days, the horses adjusted to the new security measures. At first, Bella tried to open the locks with her usual tricks, but she soon realized they wouldn't budge. Ethan and Grace occasionally caught her testing the latches with her nose, only to retreat with a calm resignation. It was almost as if she understood those barriers were there to keep her safe. The story of Pradera Serena and Bella's daring recovery continued to capture the community's attention. The farm began receiving invitations to speak at local events, and Henry and Grace saw an opportunity, not for fame, but to educate others on the importance of animal care and protection. They organized small gatherings at Pradera Serena, inviting families, children, and animal lovers to meet Bella and hear her story. It wasn't just about sharing what had happened. It was about teaching the love and dedication required to care for animals. Pradera Serena had become more than a farm. It was now a place of inspiration and learning for all who visited. Ethan and Grace guided visitors through the farm, sharing how Pradera Serena had adapted and how Bella had taught everyone a valuable lesson about safety and respect for animals. During these tours, Bella was the undeniable star. Children gazed at her in awe, while adults listened intently to the story of the clever mare and her adventures. Bella, with her calm and curious demeanor, seemed to enjoy the attention, often nudging visitors for a pat or eagerly accepting a slice of apple. "It's amazing how much she understands," one visitor remarked, watching Bella interact with the children. "It's like she knows she's special." Grace nodded with a warm smile. "She's more than special. She's taught us to be more careful, more responsible. Honestly, I think she looks out for us more than we look out for her." The events continued to draw people from the region, And Pradera Serena became more than just a horse farm. It became a symbol of protection, learning, and a commitment to animal welfare. Inspired by the farm's growing influence, Henry reached out to local authorities to collaborate on raising awareness about farm safety and animal protection. Together, they launched campaigns and shared security measures that helped other farms prevent similar incidents. As time passed, Pradera Serena returned to its usual tranquility. Days began and ended with the gentle breeze sweeping across the fields and the rhythmic sound of horses trotting freely but securely. The presence of Bella and her companions brought life, and, after everything they had endured, a renewed sense of peace. Bella, the clever mare who had caused such a stir, eventually adjusted to the new security measures. At first, she eyed the reinforced locks with curiosity, but she soon accepted them with a quiet understanding. It was as if she realized that Pradera Serena was not just a home, it was a safe haven, not only for her, but for all her stablemates. Despite the changes, Bella remained playful and mischievous, her antics always under the watchful eyes of Ethan and Grace. To them, she was more than just a horse. She was a companion and a symbol of everything Pradera Serena represented. One Sunday morning, as the sun rose over the hills, casting golden light on the dewy grass, Ethan strolled through the stables. He walked with the familiarity of someone who knew every detail of his home. His gaze softened as it landed on each horse, and when he reached Bella's stall, she greeted him with a gentle nudge to his shoulder. Ethan smiled and patted her neck. "Good morning, girl," he said. "Ready for another day?" Bella huffed softly, shaking her head as if answering him. Ethan chuckled, feeling a deep sense of contentment. Pradera Serena, after all its challenges, was exactly as it should be, a sanctuary of harmony and love. As the days went by, Grace and Henry also reflected on how the farm had transformed. It was no longer just a place to care for horses, it had become a beacon of respect and protection for animals. Visitors, though fewer now due to stricter limits, came with admiration and gratitude, inspired by Bella's story and the Bannums' dedication to preserving the farm's peace. One evening, as Henry and Grace sat on their porch watching the sunset, Henry shared his thoughts. "You know, I never imagined Pradera Serena would become something this meaningful. At first, we just wanted a place to care for horses and enjoy the countryside. But now, I feel like we're doing something much bigger." Grace smiled softly. "You're right, Henry, and I think Bella showed us just how important it is to protect what we love. She and the other horses have given us so much, not just companionship, but a sense of purpose." They sat in quiet reflection, watching Bella and her herd grazing in the distance, their silhouettes outlined against the evening sky. It was a simple scene, yet it encapsulated everything Pradera Serena stood for, a place where animals were loved, respected, and kept safe. Over time, the story of Bella and Pradera Serena became a local legend. People spoke of the mare who escaped her stall, the lessons she inspired, and the peace that now reigned in that serene corner of the countryside. The children who visited the farm listened wide-eyed as Grace shared stories about Bella. Many left with dreams of one day having a place like Pradera Serena, where they could care for animals of their own. Life at the farm settled into its usual rhythm of peaceful days and quiet nights. But something had shifted in everyone's hearts. Ethan, who had always felt a deep connection with the horses, now found himself even more devoted to their care. Every day, he spent time with Bella, gently stroking her mane and speaking to her in hushed tones, as if they shared an unspoken understanding. One evening, as stars began to twinkle in the clear sky, Ethan sat outside near the stable, gazing at the mountains in the distance. From her stall, Bella poked her head out, silently watching him. Feeling her gaze, Ethan smiled. "Thank you, Bella. Thank you for reminding us what it truly means to care and to love," he said softly. The mare looked at him with her deep, dark eyes, and Ethan felt once again that their connection went beyond words. Pradera Serena was more than a farm. It was a sanctuary where humans and animals shared a bond unlike any other, and Bella was at the heart of that bond. Pradera Serena remained a haven of calm and protection, a place for those seeking peace and for those who believed in the profound respect owed to all living beings. Bella, the mare who had forever changed the destiny of the farm, continued to graze in the meadows, free and safe, knowing she was surrounded by people who cherished her. Every day reaffirmed the farm's mission to be a beacon of hope and kindness in a world that sometimes seemed to overlook these values. The story of Pradera Serena and its star, Bella, is a journey of heartfelt lessons and emotional moments that highlight the unique connection between humans and animals. Through Bella's experiences, her playful intelligence, her knack for mischief, her dramatic abduction, and eventual rescue, we are reminded of the individuality, aspirations, and remarkable intelligence of animals, traits we too often underestimate. Bella not only won the affection and admiration of her caretakers with her clever antics, but also earned their deep respect. She became a symbol of Pradera Serena's spirit. Her journey, from her quiet life in the stable to the ordeal of being stolen and finally brought home, serves as a powerful reminder of the vulnerability of animals and the importance of protecting those who depend on us. For Ethan, Grace, and everyone at Pradera Serena, this experience was transformative. They grew from simple caretakers into passionate advocates, willing to do whatever it took to ensure the safety and well-being of their horses. The story underscores how animals have the power to change our lives, not just by offering companionship, but by teaching us vital values like respect, empathy, and responsibility. Bella inspired everyone at Pradera Serena to treasure and safeguard every living creature. In the end, the farm became more than just a place for animals. It evolved into a refuge of peace and love, a testament to the idea that when we care for and protect animals, we grow into better humans. Bella's tale invites us to reflect on our connection with the animal world and to cherish that silent but transformative bond. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like and share it. Leave a comment to tell us how it inspired you, and if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. May God bless you and guide you every step of the way.